Part 30. Fantasy. After thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, Love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 298. Boom, boom. There was a burst of thunder in the sky, and everyone couldn't help but focus on the sky. Qin Hao looked at the sudden appearance of thunder and lightning in the sky, knowing that the disaster had come, and immediately set his sights on the immortal kings. All the immortal kings listen to the order and be careful that there is unrest in the sea of the world. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Hao was already above the sky, always paying attention to the surrounding situation. Seeing that Qin Hao had set off, Qinyu Immortal Lord naturally had no other thoughts and quickly patrolled the periphery of the immortal realm. Just when they had prepared all defenses, the dark clouds in the sky were already dense. Emperor Taixuan raised his head and glanced at the space above his head, and laughed loudly. With your careful cooperation, I believe we can get through the sky calamity. Boom, a bolt of lightning as thick as an arm struck down and struck Emperor Taixuan directly, causing Emperor Taixuan to cry out in pain. The main purpose of the heavenly tribulation is to strengthen their physical strength and allow them to enter the foundation of the imperial path in both soul and body. Qin Hao felt the pressure brought by the natural disaster, and he gritted his teeth and persisted. Fortunately, Qin Hao was outside the catastrophe, otherwise he really didn't know whether he could survive the first catastrophe. Emperor Taixuan watched the second thunder chop down again, and some blood was slowly appearing on his body. Qin Hao turned his head and glanced at Emperor Taixuan, and said softly, immediately sacrifice the puppet to resist the catastrophe. The next few catastrophes may be more powerful. Emperor Taixuan knew the truth behind Qin Hao's words, and immediately sacrificed the puppet. Commanded out. As soon as the puppet came out from behind, thunder in the sky hit the puppet. Qin Hao saw that the puppet could actually absorb the power of the catastrophe, which made Qin Hao feel a little strange. He didn't know what kind of material the puppet was made of. Just when Qin Hao thought that there was no problem with the calamity, he suddenly discovered that cracks appeared quietly on the puppet. No, it seems like the puppet can't take it anymore, Qin Hao quickly reminded Emperor Taixuan. Emperor Taixuan glanced at the puppet in front of him, gritted his teeth and said, there is something wrong with the puppet. I didn't expect the puppet ancestor also wanted to harm me. When Qin Hao saw Emperor Taixuan say this, he also understood what was wrong with the puppet. The ancestor of the puppets indeed gave him a perfect puppet, but Emperor Taixuan had to go through a catastrophe. Such a puppet is undoubtedly a useless thing. Another thunderstorm of heavenly tribulation struck down, directly beating the puppet into two sides. Qin Hao saw that the puppet was gone, and he immediately became a little nervous. In Qin Hao's view, the puppet had been completely blown into pieces by the heavens. When the debris fell, Emperor Taixuan's heavenly tribulation naturally failed. Sure enough, Emperor Taixuan looked at the sky with continuous thunder, and his body could no longer withstand the impact, and slowly fell from the sky. On the table. To protect Emperor Taixuan, the heavenly tribulation has failed. Qin Hao shouted, and immediately blocked Emperor Taixuan with his body, for fear that the catastrophe would come to the fairyland again. At this time, Emperor Taixuan's body was covered with a scorched black color, which made people feel a little uncomfortable just by looking at him. I can't bear it anymore. Take Emperor Taixuan back to rest. I want to settle the score with the puppet ancestor and let him know that our fairyland is not easy to mess with. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Hao's figure rose into the sky and disappeared into the fairyland. Fantasy. After thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, Love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 299. Inside the cold and damp cave, the puppet ancestor sat leisurely inside. Suddenly, the puppet mark on the palm of the puppet ancestor disappeared, causing him to sit up from the bed immediately. Haha, it seems that Emperor Taixuan has failed to overcome the tribulation. The puppet ancestor's voice fell, and he stretched out his hand and suddenly waved towards the cave. There were puppets that had been prepared everywhere around the cave. Next is the time for your fairyland to be destroyed. Our puppet cave has been eyeing you for a long time. As soon as Qin Hao finished speaking, the puppet ancestor had already controlled the surrounding puppets and made them all follow him. When Qin Hao just arrived at the puppet cave, he found that the puppet ancestor had walked out of the cave. Perhaps because the puppet ancestor wanted to verify the puppet's actual combat, he took the puppet directly to the surrounding forest. Soon, a snow-white tiger appeared in front of them. Because the puppet had no breath at all. No, the tiger didn't know how powerful they were at all, and walked towards them slowly. Qin Hao hid behind a big tree, his eyes always on the tiger, as if he wanted to see what the puppet could do. I saw the puppet ancestor's fingers slowly moving, and the puppet in front of him shot out directly, hitting the white tiger in front of him hard. Baihu watched the puppet coming to him, his eyes full of fear. Before he could wait, when Baihu made any reaction, his body was directly knocked out by the puppet, causing him to flip several times in the air and fall to the ground. Qin Hao saw that the puppet had such a terrifying aura, and silently hid his own aura. Get up! There were puppets everywhere, and Qin Hao was not sure of victory. The puppet ancestor saw that Baihu had expired in front of him, and laughed. Yes, these puppets are the ones that come out of our puppet cave. Ah! Qin Hao took a look at the puppets and found that they all had some loopholes that had not been repaired, which Qin Hao immediately understood. It seems that only these puppets have room for appreciation, as the cracks on their bodies constantly release unnecessary breath. Qin Hao saw that the puppet was leaking air all the time, and he understood how the puppet judged good and bad. He saw the puppet ancestor slowly walked up to the white tiger, took out the white tiger inner elixir, and placed it in the body of the puppet next to him. Suddenly some blood seeped out of the puppet's body, and its strength increased again. Qin Hao looked at the puppet ancestor's actions and knew that the puppet did not know any pain, and their fairyland was going to be in trouble. Your next opponent is the Immortal King. I hope you can destroy the Immortal Realm at once, so that I will be the king. The puppet ancestor has become a little crazy. Qin Hao watched the puppet ancestor focus on the surrounding puppets, and quietly moved his body a few steps to the other side. Soon, Qin Hao rose directly into the sky and faced the puppets again. He rushed towards the direction of Immortal Domain. Immortal Lord Kinyu saw that Qin Hao had come back from the puppet cave. He didn't know what Qin Hao had done, and his eyes were always on Qin Hao. Highest alert, the puppet cave is about to attack us. Qin Hao told them what he saw and asked them all to be on defense to avoid unnecessary losses. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 300. In the dark crowd, Qin Hao discovered that the puppet ancestor had brought the puppet to the fairyland. I saw the puppet ancestor just stepped into the immortal realm, and immediately laughed out loud. Originally, I was still thinking of countermeasures to deal with you, but I didn't expect you to come to the door yourself. Kinyu Immortal Lord looked at the puppet ancestor. He had already come over and immediately jumped up from the ground, walking straight towards the puppet ancestor. Don't be arrogant, you are just the owner of a small cave, let me deal with you. Kinyu Immortal Lord has the Kylan arm, and his self-confidence has naturally exploded. He attacked the puppet ancestor with a fierce fist. But before Kinyu Immortal Lord came to the puppet ancestor, a golden ground covered his body. The puppet fell from the sky and stood in front of them. Qin Hao glanced at the puppet in front of him and knew that the puppet in front of him was exactly the same as the puppet that attacked the white tiger, and also had good combat power. Clang! As soon as the fist hit the puppet's body immediately shook and directly blocked the blow of Kinyu Immortal Lord. Qin Hao watched Kinyu Immortal Lord punch out, and the puppet's body was like lava flowing through it, directly revealing the power of Kinyu Immortal Lord from the gaps in its body. Although Qin Hao discovered that the puppet had dissolved the energy, Kinyu Immortal Master didn't know anything. He always kept his eyes on the puppet in front of him. The puppet ancestor looked at Kinyu Immortal Lord's failed attack, and his face became extremely crazy. Haha, you can't even defeat my puppet, why attack me? Kinyu Immortal Lord saw that the puppet ancestor was always mocking him, and immediately became a little panicked. Just when Kinyu Immortal was about to fight to the death, Qin Hao immediately sent a message to Kinyu. Immortal, there is something wrong with his puppet. Try if you can hit his body. When Zun heard Qin Hao's message, he inadvertently turned his head and glanced at Qin Hao, and found that Qin Hao was standing behind him and looking at him. I don't believe that I can't break your turtle shell. Come and die. Kinyu Xianzun held his hands into eagle claws and grabbed the puppet in front of him, as if he wanted to catch the puppet directly. As soon as Kinyu Xianzun grabbed the puppet showed him with great speed. He rushed straight towards the immortal Lord Kinyu. Since Qin Hao had always focused on the battlefield, the moment the puppet made some movement, Qin Hao had already disappeared from the place. The immortal Lord Kinyu was shot down. Sara, he immediately found that the puppet had actually come behind him, with a pair of eyes full of horror, and tried his best to withdraw all his magic power to form a defense. Unfortunately, the immortal Lord Kinyu had used all his strength just now, and it is really difficult to withdraw his power now. More difficult. It's all over, haha. The puppet ancestor watched the puppet punch him hard, knowing that the immortal Lord Kinyu would be seriously injured even if he did not die. But just when the immortal kings thought that the tragedy must happen, a figure slowly appeared behind the immortal Lord Kinyu, and also hit the puppet with his fist. In an instant, two fist shadows clashed in the air, causing everyone to focus on the intersection of the battle. It was seen that Qin Hao still maintained his attacking posture and his eyes were still on the puppet in front of him, as if he had regarded the puppet as his biggest enemy. Immortal Lord Kinyu saw Qin Hao blocking a blow for him, and immediately thanked Qin Hao and ran away quickly. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 301. Oh. I didn't expect you to be able to save the person. It seems I made a miscalculation. The puppet ancestor seemed to be still lifeless and silently shrank the puppet in front of him. Qin Hao glanced at the puppet ancestor in front of him and said angrily, why do you want to harm our fairyland? Don't we usually treat you badly? Xianyu usually gives some things to them, but it doesn't want the puppet ancestor to have any gratitude at all. The immortal killing formation. Qin Hao hit the formation in front of him, his eyes always on the puppet ancestor. In Qin Hao's view, the reason why the puppet is in an invincible position is naturally because the puppet has no pain. If Qin Hao wants after defeating the puppet directly, he would naturally destroy the puppet completely and not let him remove his power. The puppet ancestor knew that Qin Hao was much more powerful than Kinyu Immortal Lord, so he slowly summoned the two puppets next to him, directly letting them break into the formation. Since the puppet ancestor wants to occupy the immortal realm, he naturally has to defeat Qin Hao head-on. Otherwise, the puppet ancestor will not be able to convince the crowd, and there will be no way to control the immortal kings. When the puppet just walked into the Xuxian killing array, he really saw the power of Qin Hao. At this time, Qin Hao had completely opened the killing array, and the swords were constantly rotating in the formation, wrapping the puppet in front of him. If it weren't for the puppet ancestor who reinforced the outer layer of the puppet, I'm afraid the puppet would have been directly scattered by Qin Hao as soon as it came over. Clang, the blade continuously bombarded the puppet, scattering the materials on the puppet's body layer by layer. At this time, the puppet has no way to completely relieve its strength and can only rely on its own tyranny to resist the killing array. The immortal killing formation is more than just a simple move. Now it's time for me to perform. After saying that, Qin Hao formed a seal with his hands in front of him, and the speed in the Zuxian killing formation naturally accelerated a lot. "Kill the immortals and destroy the gods," a loud shout came out from Qin Hao's mouth, and the blades in the Zuxian killing formation all fell on the puppet. Immediately, there were some irreparable scars on the puppet's body, which made the puppet ancestor stand outside and stomp his feet in distress. Every puppet was carefully made by him, and naturally he was not willing to let others destroy his production. The puppet ancestor slowly raised his head and looked directly at Qin Hao. "I want you to die." The puppet ancestor had no regard for any feelings, and rushed straight into the Zuxian killing array, controlling the two puppets to block the surrounding blades for him. Qin Hao watched the puppet ancestor getting closer and closer to him, and he didn't know that the puppet what exactly was the ancestor going to do. A bad premonition quietly emerged in his heart. I saw that just when the puppet ancestor reached the edge of the formation, there were already some changes in the formation. The puppet had completely swelled up, as if it felt like it was going to explode at any time. Qinyu Immortal Lord raised his head and glanced, and immediately reminded Qin Hao, "No, he wants to self-destruct the puppet to break the formation, retreat quickly." Although Qinyu Immortal Lord had reminded him, Qin Hao had no time to escape. He watched the puppet explode in huge waves in front of him. Suddenly, a golden figure rushed out from the immortal realm, blocking the way. In front of Qin Hao, all the shock waves were naturally absorbed by him. Fantasy: after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author: Love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 302. Puppet Ancestor: in vain you are a quasi-immortal emperor, but you actually need to use a self-destructing puppet to get out. It's really shameful. When Qin Hao heard Emperor Taixuan come out, he immediately knew that the puppet ancestor in front of him had hidden his strength, and his figure immediately flew several feet away. The puppet ancestor looked at Emperor Taixuan coming out and looked up and down. Emperor Taixuan found that Emperor Taixuan's body still did not understand the foundation of the Emperor's way. "Although you can temporarily stop me, are you sure they can stop my puppet?" After saying that, all the puppets rose into the air and stood in front of Emperor Taixuan. When the momentum of the puppets just came out, Qin Hao immediately led the immortal kings to slowly rise into the air, keeping his eyes on the two forces collided in the air, shaking all the surrounding mountains to the ground. "Puppet old ghost, although I don't have the foundation of the realm emperor, it is still easy for me to deal with you." Emperor Taixuan knew that Qin Hao and the others could not hold on for long, so he immediately bombarded the puppet ancestor. Because Emperor Taixuan was worried that the fairy land would be destroyed, he directly tore open the space and brought the puppet ancestor to the void space. Inside, Qin Hao saw that Emperor Taixuan had already started fighting. Naturally, they could not continue watching the show, and all their eyes were focused on the puppet in front of them. "Destroy them as quickly as possible before they absorb our power," Qin Hao roared at the surrounding immortal kings. Since the immortal realm is their base camp, they certainly have an absolute advantage in numbers. Qin Hao slowly walked up to a puppet, and the immortal killing formation immediately started. "Come out," the thunder in the sky begins to flash. Boom, waves of thunder rang out from the sky, doubling the combat power of the immortal kings immediately. A bolt of thunder as thick as an arm struck down, directly hitting the puppet in front of him, sending a burst of silver light out of the puppet. Qin Hao watched as the silver light gradually faded away, and the puppet became tighter and tighter, as if its strength had increased. What happened? Why does the puppet do no damage at all, and even its strength is enhanced? Qin Hao muttered for a while, his eyes constantly looking at the puppet, as if he wanted to see where the problem lies. Qinyu Immortal Lord glanced at Qin Hao, and quickly said to Qin Hao, "Unless we 1-6 breaks the puppets apart, otherwise they would absorb our power." Qin Hao discovered that the other puppets had the same situation and immediately understood. Qin Hao directly used the oldest method to operate the killing array, and slowly attached it to the puppet. Suddenly all the materials on the puppet where it fell down, revealing the flesh and blood inside, causing Qin Hao to suddenly widen his eyes. No wonder the puppets can absorb our power. It turns out they are all human puppets. When the voice fell, all the immortal kings began to hate the puppet in front of them. The human puppet was the immortal king who was captured by the puppet ancestor and refined into a living puppet. Such a puppet can naturally continue to practice. Suddenly, a bright light shot out from the void space and rushed directly towards the boundary sea. When Qin Hao looked at the bright light in front of him, he immediately recognized what the bright light was. No, the puppet ancestor is asking for help from Jihei. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 303. Despicable, you dare to send a rescue signal to them. Emperor Taixuan and the puppet ancestor walked out of the void and focused on the flowing light. The puppet ancestor saw that Emperor Taixuan had no way to stop him, and said with a smile, the immortal domain will just wait for the defeat, Jihei, but there are still some people interested in you. Emperor Taixuan gritted his teeth and looked at the puppet ancestor. He didn't know what force the puppet ancestor wanted to notify. He is the only one in their immortal domain who has entered the quasi-emperor's strength, and the others can't resist the quasi-immortal emperor at all. Just in Taixuan, when Emperor Xian was about to fight for his life, another light and shadow chased Liu Guang directly, causing all the immortal kings to focus on the light and shadow. Who is that? He actually dared to let go of speed and chase the immortal king of Qinyu. Focused his attention on Guangying, but he didn't realize that the person in front of him was Qin Hao. Emperor Taixuan listened to the immortal king of Qinyu's words, and immediately looked over there, and found that Qin Hao had already appeared around Lu Guang. He can only put all his hopes on Qin Hao now, otherwise our fairyland will have to prepare for the worst. Qin Hao just caught up with Lu Guang and found that Lu Guang was actually made by a child puppet. Let him immediately block it in front of the puppet. Clang, his arms blocked the puppet, and his body was directly knocked back several feet by the puppet. Perhaps it was because the puppet was only used to transmit messages, and it didn't even have any attack power, so he could easily control the puppet. Seeing that Qin Hao had controlled the puppet, Emperor Taixuan smiled and said to the puppet ancestor, haha, should we settle the score next? The puppet ancestor watched helplessly as his puppet was blown up, knowing that my message can no longer be conveyed. Damn, I didn't expect Qin Hao to have such speed. If I had known, I would have sent a few more puppets out. The puppet ancestor gritted his teeth, and his heart was completely filled with regret. Emperor Taixuan looked at the puppet ancestor standing in front of him, and took action directly against the puppet ancestor, as if he wanted to take down the puppet ancestor directly. Everyone. The immortal kings saw that the puppet had been controlled by Qin Hao, and they naturally continued to attack the puppet in front of them. Suddenly, various lights flashed in the immortal realm, making Qin Hao quietly relax, knowing that nothing would happen. There's a problem. The puppet ancestor saw everyone taking action against his puppet, and immediately beat out the puppet he was proud of, and directly entangled it with Qin Hao. Qin Hao watched a puppet bombard him coming over. There was a killing formation slowly taking shape in front of him. As soon as the puppet entered his killing formation, Qin Hao had already started to rotate the formation, and gradually swallowed it toward the puppet. When the blade in the formation had just touched the on top of the puppet, Qin Hao discovered that the puppet in front of him didn't even react at all, as if it was deliberately attracting Qin Hao's attention. Suddenly, a stream of light slipped out from the solace of Qin Hao's feet and went straight to the other side. Qin Hao and Emperor Taixuan, they looked at each other and focused directly on Lu Guang. Both of them could see what the puppet in front of them was. Isn't that the puppet you gave us? Why can you continue to control? Qin Hao didn't understand. They were not prepared for the puppets in front of them, otherwise they wouldn't have done nothing. Fantasy, After thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 304. Call out, a golden light shot directly into the boundary sea. Suanwu's tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, his huge body turned around, and his eyes were focused on the depths of the boundary sea. Hey, is the door that has been closed for thousands of years finally opened? Suanwu shook his head helplessly and closed his eyes again. Just when Suanwu closed his eyes, waves surged in the surrounding sea, causing undercurrents to surge in the Black Sea. Suddenly, the sea calmed down, a large door opened, and countless warriors in armor came out. However, there were some ghost fires hidden under the armor. They were obviously warriors from other planes, which made them immediately alert. Is this the Black Sea? It seems that it won't take long for us to reach the fairyland. The leader analyzed the environment and immediately burst into laughter. In their view, taking over the immortal realm was just a matter of time. Not long after the armored warriors came out, Qin Hao and Emperor Taixuan had already discovered, causing the two of them to look at each other quickly. Oops, it seems that a quasi-immortal emperor has come out of the boundary sea. What should I do? Emperor Taixuan set his sights on Qin Hao. Qin Hao was the second master in their immortal domain, so Emperor Taixuan naturally placed all his hopes on Qin Hao. The puppet ancestor saw that the sea of world had begun to turmoil. He couldn't help laughing. The end of your fairyland has come. Once they come from the boundary sea, you will be finished. Qin Hao watched the puppet ancestor focus on them, and immediately strangled the puppet in front of him into a ball of nothingness. I will go to the boundary sea and try my best to block them all in the boundary sea. Qin Hao hugged his fists at the puppet ancestor and flew out directly. When they saw that Qin Hao had left, the puppet ancestor taunted Emperor Taixuan directly. The quasi-immortal emperor is not Qin Hao. If you can resist, are you just going to watch him die? Emperor Taixuan saw that the puppet ancestor had been mocking them and said angrily, you should think about how to leave first. The puppet ancestor saw Emperor Taixuan launching an attack on him, and naturally he hurriedly blocked it. Suddenly the two of them were fighting together again, causing all the immortal kings to start fighting. At the same time, Qin Hao had already arriving at the boundary sea. At this time, there was chaos around the boundary sea. There was a huge Suanwu shadow on the Black Sea, shrouding them all in it. Qin Hao saw that Suanwu had already taken action against them, and knew that Suanwu had already taken action against them. It helped them a lot. Although Suanwu is not a quasi-immortal emperor, Suanwu is an ancient beast after all, and its defensive power is amazing. I saw the soul flame in the armored warrior's helmet constantly burning, frantically attacking the defense in front of him. Qin Hao looked at the soul flames in their eyes and immediately recognized their identities. I didn't expect that you are actually from the bloodthirsty tribe. It seems that our fairyland must deal with the puppet ancestor as soon as possible. Qin Hao muttered while rushing towards the direction of the immortal realm. Suanwu helped them by some time. Naturally, Qin Hao couldn't let Suanwu's efforts go in vain, so he directly asked Qin Hao to take action against the puppet ancestor. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 305. Quickly seize the puppet ancestor. Suanwu is already supporting us in the boundary sea. Qin Hao muttered as he joined their battlefield, wanting to see if he could help Emperor Taixuan. At this time, Emperor Taixuan had already tied with the puppet ancestor, and any force would gradually tip the balance. Tilt. When the puppet ancestor heard Suanwu take action, he immediately set his sights in the direction of the Black Sea and gritted his teeth tightly. In the puppet ancestor's view, he had already secured victory, but Suanwu unexpectedly broke his plan. I saw the puppet ancestor glanced at Qin Hao in front of him, and then at Emperor Taixuan on the side, knowing that he was no match for the two of them. Unexpectedly, Black Sea also joined the battle. It seems that you still have some friends in the fairyland, the puppet ancestor sneered, his eyes always on Qin Hao. Qin Hao watched the puppet ancestor focus on himself, and laughed. Of course we have some friends, otherwise you think we is fairyland isolated and helpless. Emperor Taixuan knew that they wanted to fight quickly and launched an attack directly on the puppet ancestor. Suddenly the battlefield was filled with golden light, and the two of them had already exchanged no less than 10 moves. Unfortunately, the puppets around the puppet ancestor were too strong. Emperor Xian had no way to break the defense in a short time. Qin Hao saw that they were still tied, and the immortal killing formation had taken shape, directly covering the puppet ancestor. How dare you join forces to attack me? Do you think that in your fairyland, more will defeat less? There was a touch of anger in the tone of the puppet ancestor. Qin Hao glanced at the puppet ancestor and said with a sneer, we all have the same attitude towards intruders, so you should just surrender and capture them. As soon as the voice fell, they discovered that there was a dark unknown object rushing over from the horizon. The puppet ancestor looked at the things on the horizon and immediately burst into laughter. Haha, they are finally here. Your fairyland is going to be finished. In the opinion of the puppet ancestor, they only need a quasi-immortal emperor to come over, and the immortal realm will be completely controlled by them. Emperor Taixuan turned his head and glanced outside, and said directly to Qin Hao, things outside are just like this. Leave it to you, I'll get rid of him as soon as possible. Qin Hao knew that Emperor Taixuan could not be distracted, so he immediately broke away from their battle. When Qin Hao just came out, he found that there were bloodthirsty beetles in front of him. It seems that Suan Wu has controlled the most powerful part of you. You seem to be no match for me. Qin Hao said as he fired out the Zuxian killing formation. Suddenly, there were bursts of thunder in the Zuxian killing formation, and all the bloodthirsty beetles were surrounded inside. With the continuous bombardment of thunder, inside the Zuxian killing formation, there are fewer and fewer bloodthirsty beetles. Haha, it seems that the people you invited here are not very useful. As soon as Qin Hao's voice fell, the puppet ancestor and Taixuan emperor turned their attention to Qin Hao and found that Qin Hao had already controlled them all. Damn it, Suan Wu actually controlled them all in the Black Sea. The puppet ancestor could tell who they were from the bloodthirsty beetles in front of him. Emperor Taixuan saw that Qin Hao had the upper hand. The golden light glowed on his palms, and he directly bombarded the puppet ancestor again. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 306. Boom, boom. Several thunders rang out, and Qin Hao discovered that there were no bloodthirsty beetles in the Zuxian killing array. After taking back the immortal killing formation, leaving corpses all over the place, the puppet ancestor shook his head helplessly. In the opinion of the puppet ancestor, their bloodthirsty clan did not send out powerful people at all, they were all small minions. Just when Qin Hao was about to rejoin the battlefield, some soldiers and generals immediately ran over from outside and walked directly in front of Qin Hao. Qin Hao glanced at the shrimp soldiers and crab generals in front of him and said directly to them, what's the matter? Just tell me. When they saw that Qin Hao needed them to speak out, they immediately said to Qin Hao, Suan Wu immortal, the king is no longer alive, and we need you to send troops to rescue him. After hearing what they said, Qin Hao glanced at the other people around him and found that they had no extra immortal king to send. Emperor Taixuan glanced at Qin Hao and said directly to Qin Hao, you go with them, they can't do any harm to me. Now that Emperor Taixuan had spoken, Qin Hao naturally had no other words to say. Directly focusing on the shrimp soldiers and crab generals. You lead the way, and I will follow you. As he said that, Qin Hao followed them out of the immortal realm. When Qin Hao just walked out of the immortal realm, he immediately noticed a trace of murderous intent, which made Qin Hao immediately take 2 steps back. Poof, the shrimp soldiers and crab generals did not react and were directly bombarded into nothingness. Qin Hao raised his head and glanced at them, and found that they were all puppets with empty eyes. I didn't expect that the puppet ancestor actually had such a move, Qin Hao said as he walked to the middle of them. At this time, the puppets took on a very strange position, directly surrounding Qin Hao in the middle. The aura of a single puppet was not very strong, but so many of them were superimposed at the same time. Qin Hao naturally felt that it was a bit too much. I saw that each of their puppets stacked up was enough to fight Qin Hao several times. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals had been killed by them. Qin Hao had no idea what the situation in the Black Sea was now, so Qin Hao is naturally getting more and more anxious. I can't continue to be blocked by you, otherwise you will trap me to death sooner or later. Qin Hao knew that the puppets didn't feel pain at all, nor did they feel any fatigue. If Qin Hao was trapped by them all the time, his strength would naturally decline more and more. Qin Hao saw that the Zhuxian killing formation was beaten out, and they were also beaten. It is also wrapped in his own formation, so that the puppet can only hit his own formation. In this way, Qin Hao's own strength can be protected. Boom, the puppet punched the barrier on the formation, causing the Zhuxian killing formation to start operating immediately. As the Zhuxian killing formation started to move, the blades inside kept cutting at their bodies, as if they were going to disintegrate them directly. Unfortunately, the puppets' bodies were too strong, and Qin Hao had no way of damaging them. At this time, the 9 puppets inside stood together and punched the Zhuxian killing formation at the same time, creating a gap in the Zhuxian killing formation. Qin Hao's eyes suddenly widened, surprised that their strength was so strong. Fantasy, after thousands of years of seclusion, I became a saint. Author, love to eat chicken legs. Chapter 307. Do you think you can stop me like this? Qin Hao placed one hand on the sword array and activated all the Zhuxian killing arrays. If all 9 puppets are controlled by the puppet ancestor himself, I'm afraid Qin Hao still needs to think about it. And they don't have anyone to control them at all. Qin Hao was not afraid of them at all. The power of the Zhuxian killing formation continued to increase. Soon, the power of the Zhuxian killing formation was revealed. Clang, the blade continued to rotate in the formation. Qin Hao focused his eyes on the formation, his eyes filled with coldness. In Qin Hao's opinion, it was too easy for him to deal with the puppet in front of him. After some blessings, the puppets in front of them had already been chopped into pieces by Qin Hao, leaving them just able to maintain their bodies. Seeing that the formation had reached its peak, Qin Hao directly took the formation back. As soon as the formation returned to Qin Hao, cracks appeared on the 9 puppets, causing them to disintegrate into a pile of fragments in the air. Just when they were all broken, the puppet ancestor suddenly looked in the direction where Qin Hao left, his eyes full of resentment. Qin Hao, sooner or later I will break all the bones in your body inch by inch to let you know how powerful I am. As soon as the voice fell, Emperor Taixuan bombarded directly in the direction of the puppet ancestor. Suddenly their battle continued to enter a white-hot state, and other immortal kings also took action against the puppet in front of them. At the same time, Qin Hao had already turned into a stream of light and rushed directly towards the direction of the Black Sea. At this time, the Black Sea had completely changed its appearance. The sky above the Black Sea had completely turned into pure black, and a huge green tortoise shell was suspended in the air. Only however, there were several figures standing next to the green tortoise shell. Some bloody energy bloomed in their hands, as if they wanted to break the tortoise shell. Suan Wu, why do you need to be our enemy? The elders of the bloodthirsty tribe stood up and tried to persuade Suan Wu. In their eyes, Suan Wu himself was quite strong. Since Suan Wu lived in the Black Sea all year round, they had no way to attack Suan Wu and could only watch Suan Wu attack them. But now that a group of them have joined forces, Suan Wu is naturally no match for them, allowing them to directly gain the upper hand. Suanwu's huge head stretched out and he said with a smile, I have been living in the Black Sea for tens of thousands of years. Could it be that do you still want to teach me how to do things? The elder of the bloodthirsty tribe saw that Suanwu was still stubborn, and the strength in his hands naturally became stronger. Boom, another long energy whip hit the tortoise shell, directly creating a crack in the tortoise shell. When Suanwu saw the cracks on it, his eyes immediately solidified slightly. It's not good, the tortoise shell is about to break. After the voice fell, the elders of the bloodthirsty tribe worked together to hit the cracks, directly breaking the tortoise shell into one piece. Nothingness. In an instant, all the elders in the turtle shell were rescued, and each of them possessed the strength of the immortal king. Once they are allowed to go to the immortal realm, I am afraid that the immortal realm will be in crisis-like destruction. Just when Suanwu thought he was about to lose, Qin Hao's figure slowly appeared next to Suanwu, and the Xuxian killing formation directly bombarded them. The bloodthirsty clan elders glanced at the immortal killing formation in front of them, and they immediately took a few steps back, their eyes filled with horror.